Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Films. My name is Alan. Seems like 2020 is turning out to be the craziest year in my short lifespan. The Mayans basically were 8 years too early with a prediction, which honestly is not an acceptable margin of error, which is probably why they aren't around anymore. But the point is, 2020 is supernatural, over the top, full of chlamydia, and just completely disastrous. Just like Warhammer 40K. If anything, this franchise could probably help out a lot of people who are right now stuck at home, scared and worried about their future. Because one exposure to the over-the-top Warhammer 40K universe will put everything into perspective and make you realize that things are nowhere near as bad as they could be. So here are 10 reasons why the Warhammer 40K universe is one of the most terrifying and craziest around in science fiction. Or fantasy. I don't even know what it is, to be honest. In the Warhammer 40K universe, humanity has finally unified itself and spread amongst the stars. But instead of finding bountiful resources and friendly sentient beings, we found several alien species who all individually are terrifying enough to star as the main bad guys in their own sci-fi franchises. First, you have the Necrons, soulless creations and former servants of the ancient star gods. A long time ago, they had organic bodies, but their species were tricked by a godlike intelligence into transferring their souls into robotic skeletal machines. This transformation took away all of their empathy and compassion, which really helps them achieve their ultimate goal of taking over the galaxy. Oh, and they also really like using gauze weapons that shoot out a green lightning-like beam, which breaks people apart at the molecular level. So now it's not just the flesh wound. Then you have the Oryx, who are essentially just pure chaos and constantly waging war against everyone, including themselves. Their war machines don't make any sense from an engineering standpoint and are just a bunch of pieces of scrap bolted together, but their collective psychic belief is so powerful that it can bring these creations to life. For instance, if an orc paints a rocket yellow, it most likely will do a lot more damage because that is the collective belief of orcs. That yellow signifies damage. Oh, and they also breed and spread like mushrooms. Literally, they invade planets in the form of innocent spores. I really hate elves. Well, except for Liv Tyler. I don't like them because they're always lamenting the past and the loss of their supremacy thanks to the much younger races like humanity who have come to dominate the galaxy. They are the ultimate haters. The Dark Eldar are the remaining members of an extremely technologically advanced alien race that destroyed itself through ridiculously hedonistic pursuits driven by, I guess, boredom? The Eldar's ancestors were so cruel and emotionally messed up that their pursuit of more emotionally messed up experiences ultimately resonated in the Imperium. The Imperium was the other dimensional plane in which psychic energy drew its power from. The excesses of the Dark Eldar's ancestors led to the creation of a new chaos god known as Slaanesh, who drew billions of Eldar into the warp and consumed their souls. The Dark Eldar remain technologically very advanced, and their warriors are deadly and completely inhuman. Their movements are nightmarish and difficult to detect, and they can also wield psychic powers. The Dark Eldar are no longer a proud empire. They now roam the galaxy in nomadic bands, where they basically look to kill, torture, and kidnap sentient beings, and basically feed off of their psychic terror. Now, we could just keep naming terrible Xenos that the Imperium man has to face, but that wouldn't really be fair to all the other terrible things that people have to deal with in the Imperium of Man. So let's end it off with what I consider as one of the most terrifying Xenos in the Warhammer 40K universe, and that is the Tyranids. The Tyranids are insect-like aliens that bring with them a system-devouring ecosystem that has one sole purpose: to consume and destroy all life they encounter. Connected through a hive mind, a Tyranid invasion included billions if not trillions of life forms that act as if they are one large superorganism. The Tyranids overwhelm their enemies in giant tidal waves of terrifying insects, monsters, and consume all biological matter, which is then turned into biochemical soup. That, in turn, is turned into more Tyranid organisms. And yes, whenever they consume a new species, they take aspects of their genetic material that they like. Basically, if you have even the smallest Tyranid presence on your planet, you're pretty much done. Now, these Xenos mostly live within our dimension, which is terrifying enough, but to make matters worse, all across the Milky Way there's a giant tear in the actual fabric of reality. This tear is called the Great Rift, and it opens up multiple pathways from the Imperium that we were talking about to our own galaxy. The Imperium is not only full of psychic energy, but also the Chaos Gods. These were beings of immense power that have legions of demonic servants under their control. The Chaos Gods are also really good at corrupting sentient beings, including humans. As a matter of fact, one of the largest threats to mankind actually came from within the Imperium and not from some other Xeno threat. One of the Emperor of Mankind's favorite sons, the Primarch Horus, was corrupted by chaos and started a civil war that nearly destroyed humanity itself and turned the Emperor into a husk. Although most pictures of the Emperor of Mankind shows him in his living form, his final battle with Horus basically destroyed his body. After his battle, the Emperor was placed into his golden throne, which had been turned into a cybernetic life support mechanism that will sustain his dying body. The Emperor was further sustained by the psychic energy of 1,000 psychic human beings that were sacrificed to him every day. The golden throne has managed to keep the Emperor's body in stasis for more than 10,000 years. But slowly, even the golden throne is failing, which would be disastrous because it would lead to the death of the Emperor of Mankind. And see, while his body was shattered, his mind was actually in the warp, constantly battling against the Chaos Gods who sought to destroy and corrupt mankind. And not only was the Emperor of Mankind the leader of mankind, his massive psychic abilities also allowed him to project the Astronomicon, a psychic navigational beacon that allows human navigators to navigate through the terrifying Imperium. So by now you probably realize that the Imperium or warp space is terrifying. So why are humans voluntarily going there? Well, it's because the warp is the only place where faster than light speed travel is possible, although how much time is saved during a warp space trip is never certain or even known until a ship exits the warp. And while in the warp, it was incredibly difficult to detect spatial movement, which means that navigation was extremely difficult as well. So it was not unheard of for entire battle fleets and logistical supply missions to just disappear without a trace. Also, while traveling in the warp, there's a good chance that chaos demons will come and invade your ship and corrupt everyone on your ship, driving them crazy. It's basically event horizon times like 1,000. The lack of stable FTL travel, along with the many Xeno threats and demon threats from other dimensions, has made life incredibly difficult and terrifying for the average human being. Countless human worlds were lost every day and overwhelmed by the forces of evil. It also means that the Imperium's limited resources are going to be guided towards more important worlds like Cadia. Worlds deemed unsuitable for Imperium colonization will be lucky to get any support from the central government at all. Most of these types of worlds have devolved to feudal-era technology, which leaves them woefully unprepared for an actual extraterrestrial invasion. You also have more primitive pharaoh worlds where humans live as nomadic hunter-gatherers. On the other end of the spectrum, you had the massive hive cities on hive worlds which contain billions of humans living in impoverished conditions. So you can basically forget about the American dream of having that suburban house, 2 cars, and a backyard with an above-ground pool. It's not going to happen. Remember how we said that the Golden Throne is slowly failing and the Emperor is slowly dying? Well, the reason this is happening is because humanity reached its zenith in technological might and scientific knowledge around the 25th millennium, which is when the Age of Strife began, which completely shattered humanity into its current state, where many of the technologies we created are no longer understood and just carefully maintained. Now, the Age of Strife began all thanks to these massive AI armies that humanity created to fight its wars. These men of iron eventually turned on humanity and started a terrible war that nearly wiped out our galaxy-wide civilization. It was also around this time that the ancestors of the Dark Eldar also awoke in the Chaos God Slanesh, which created massive warp storms, making travel and communication so difficult that several parts of the Imperium were just cut off. This combination of terrible events leads to the very decaying Imperium man we see today. Whether you join a completely under-equipped planetary defense force full of criminal scum and murderers, or survive long enough to join the Imperial Guard, things are always going to be really bad for the average human being. There are no good professions that you can really join. Even if you are lucky enough to be accepted for training as a Space Marine, the process is long and gruesome, and makes the whole Spartan 2 program seem kind of benevolent in comparison. And that is because at the core of Warhammer is the concept of war, which in itself is terrifying and destructive, and in this case, never-ending. Which is why if you don't like those things, I probably don't recommend you check out this Warhammer 40K universe. But for everyone else, you know, it's really not a bad franchise to get into. I definitely recommend it. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below. As usual, my name is Alan, reminding you that life is a movie, and you are the protagonist.